imagery of children as young as 11, including girls sexualised and topless. This is child sexual abuse. We've seen reports of photos being shared of women in bikinis, tied up and gagged, with bruises, covered in blood, and much, much more. Lives can and have been devastated by this content, which is designed to harass, torment, and violate people's dignity. They are not harmless images. They're weapons of abuse, disproportionately aimed at women and girls. And they are illegal. Last week, X limited the image creation function to paid subscribers. This does not go anywhere near far enough. It is insulting to victims to say, you can still have this service if you're willing to pay. And it is monetising abuse. So let me be crystal clear. Under the Online Safety Act, sharing intimate images without someone's consent or threatening to share them, including images of people in their underwear, is a criminal offence for individuals and for platforms. My predecessor, the Right Honourable Member for Hove and Portslade, rightly made this a priority offence, so services have to take proactive action to stop this content from appearing in the first place. The Data Act, passed last year, made it a criminal offence to create or request the creation of non-consensual intimate images. And today, I can announce to the House that this offence will be brought into force this week. And that I will make it a priority offence in the Online Safety Act too. This means individuals are committing a criminal offence if they create or seek to create such content, including on X. And anyone who does this should expect to face the full extent of the law. But the responsibilities do not just lie with individuals for their own behaviour. The platforms that host such material must be held accountable, including X. Madam Deputy Speaker, Ofcom this morning confirmed that they have opened a formal investigation into X and will assess their compliance with the Online Safety Act. The government expects Ofcom to set out a timeline for the investigation as soon as possible. The public, and most importantly, the victims of Grok's activities, expect swift and decisive action, so this must not take months and months. But X does not have to wait for the Ofcom investigation to conclude. They can choose to act sooner to ensure this abhorrent and illegal material cannot be shared on their platform. If they do not, Ofcom will have the backing of this government to use the full powers which Parliament has given them. And I would remind X and all other platforms that this includes the power to issue fines of up to 10% of a company's worldwide qualifying revenue. And in the most serious cases, Ofcom can apply for a court order to stop UK users accessing the site. Madam Deputy Speaker, this government will do everything in our power to keep women and especially children safe online. So I can today confirm that we will build on all the measures I have already outlined and legislate in the Crime and Policing Bill, which is currently going through Parliament, to criminalise nudification apps. This new criminal offence will make it illegal for companies to supply tools designed to create non-consensual intimate images, targeting the problem at its source. And in addition to all of these actions, we expect technology companies to introduce the steps recommended by Ofcom's guidance on how to make platforms safer for women and girls without delay. And if they do not, I am prepared to go further. Because this Labour government believes tackling violence against women and girls is as important online as it is in the real world. Now, Madam Deputy Speaker, this is not, as some would claim, about restricting freedom of speech. That's something that I and the whole government hold very dear. It is about tackling violence against women and girls. It's about upholding basic British values of decency and respect and ensuring the standards we expect offline are upheld online. And it is about exercising our sovereign power and responsibility to uphold the laws of this land. I hope this is a time when MPs on all sides of the House will stand up for British laws and British values and call out the platforms that allow explicit, degrading and illegal content. It is time to choose a side. Opposition MPs can either support the legislative action we are taking under the Online Safety Act, or they can ally themselves with those who think the creation and publication of sexually manipulated images of women and children is acceptable. And I say in particular to the one Reform MP sitting in this House that if they continue to call for Online Safety Act to be repealed, they are shamefully supporting scrapping protections that keep women and children safe. If I may, Madam Deputy Speaker, briefly, I'd like to address calls from many MPs and others, understandable calls for the government to end its participation on X. I really do understand why many colleagues have come to this conclusion when X seems so unwilling to clean up its act. The government will, of course, keep our participation on X under review. But our job is to protect women and girls from illegal and harmful content wherever it is found. And I think it's also worth bearing in mind, with 19 million people on X in this country, and more than a quarter of them saying that they use it as their primary source of news, that our views, and often simply the facts, need to be heard wherever possible. Madam Deputy Speaker, let me conclude by saying this. I believe, and the government believes, AI is a transformative technology which has the power and potential to bring around extraordinary and welcome change, creating jobs and growth, diagnosing and treating diseases, helping children learn at school, tackling climate change, and so much more besides. But in order to seize these opportunities, people must feel confident that they and their children are safe online and that AI is not used for destructive and abusive ends. Many tech companies want to and are acting responsibly, but where they do not, we must and we will act. Innovation should serve humanity, not degrade it. So we'll leave no stone unturned in our determination to stamp out these demeaning, degrading and illegal images. If that means strengthening the existing laws, we are prepared to do so, because this government stands on the side of decency. We stand on the side of law. We stand for basic British values that are supported by the vast majority of people in this country, and I commend this statement to the House.
Shadow Secretary of State, Julia Lopez.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and to the Secretary of State for advance notice of her statement. Last week, the public outrage was rightly expressed about the use of artificial intelligence to undress women and children in photographs by X's AI assistant Grok. The use of AI in this way, without consent, is wrong. It is disturbing, and in many cases, it is illegal. We support Ofcom taking enforcement action where an AI tool is used to generate illegal content, especially that of children. We support the government's stance on nudification tools. X itself has warned of consequences for anyone prompting Grok to make illegal content. The tools in question have been put behind a paywall for the easy identification via name and bank details of anyone misusing them. Beyond the platform, however, the Internet Watch Foundation has identified cases where perpetrators have used Grok in tandem with other AI tools to generate Category A material. As the chairman of the Culture Select Committee has rightly said, such mainstream AI tools must not become an enabling step in the child abuse production pipeline. Madam Deputy Speaker, law already exists to deal with much of this. The Protection of Children Act, the Criminal Justice Act, the Sexual Offences Act, the Data Act when the government voted against Baroness Owen's tougher amendments, the Online Safety Act. These laws should be enforced, and we now await Ofcom setting out its next steps as an independent regulator. Regardless of the law, it is right to expect AI companies to anticipate and prevent misuse of products before their deployment through rigorous red teaming. For a law to deter, I accept the enforcement threat must be credible, but its use must also be proportionate. Notwithstanding the soft backpedalling of the Secretary of State today, the government's appendage swinging over the weekend was extremely serious. Ministers mooted as an urgent remedy the banning of a site of 21 million monthly users in this country, despite another minister guffawing that banning X was conspiracy theory number 3627. Madam Deputy Speaker, since its invention, the internet and social media have been misused, often criminally, by people traffickers, paedophiles, fraudsters, the gutter dwellers of our society. Nobody is on their side. But government has never before proposed to wholesale block TikTok, Google or Facebook for the frequent and often flagrant misuse of their sites. It is an extraordinarily serious move against a platform that can be used for good, for uncovering scandals, sparking democratic revolution and allowing day-to-day the free exchange of ideas, including ideas we don't like. It is that very power for good that sees Iran's mullahs reach to block the internet in the face of courageous protesters. This episode poses legitimate questions about who holds power in the internet age. Many worry about the accrued influence of big tech titans, myself included. But Madam Deputy Speaker, they worry too about the power of government to divert, hide and duck accountability. They worry about this government. The uncomfortable truth for all of us is that some of this imagery sits in a legal grey area. What Grok produced at scale in 2026 is a modern-day iteration of an old problem, from crude drawings to Photoshop. Grok is not the only tool capable of generating false or offensive imagery, and not all of this content will cross the threshold into illegality. Plenty of it is sick, degrading, morally repugnant, but it does not cross the criminal threshold. What then is the Secretary of State proposing to do about the difficult enforcement choices that a regulator or police force must make? Because the risk is that with finite resource in a highly politically sensitive environment, regulators could be diverted from pursuing the most abhorrent and dangerous crimes. Further, if we wish to mitigate the risk to children, one simple intervention may help stop from sharing their own image too freely. That's raising the digital age of consent for social media to 16. The Mayor of Manchester, Andy Burnham, fulsomely agrees as the cross-party consensus grows. Does the Secretary of State? Madam Deputy Speaker, the Secretary of State knows that there are geopolitical consequences to her rhetoric. Figures close to President Trump have already threatened sanctions. Has the Secretary of State engaged with the US government? Has she been advised on the nature of any retaliation were the UK government to block X? The US-UK tech deal has already been paused. We need clarity on what else is at stake. To conclude, Madam Deputy Speaker, the Tech Secretary has said, this government is as determined to ensure women and girls are safe online as we are to ensure they are safe in the real world. To this end, will she be ensuring the government enforces against itself for its failure to advance the rape gang inquiry, its failure to stop puberty blocking trials, its failure to implement guidance on single-sex spaces, its inability to deport illegal migrants who have committed sex offences? For while this government rightly worries about the online sphere, and we support them, there is plenty to be getting on with in the real world.
Secretary of State.
Really? Is that the best you could do? Is that the Conservative Party now?
I was going to say at the beginning I was grateful to the Honourable Lady for her support for action from Ofcom, for its investigation, their support for our action on banning nudification apps, and that I hope she and her party actually vote for the crime and policing bill at the final stages. But may I just say here, she then began her own campaign of misinformation in the House. I merely stated the facts about the Online Safety Act, which that there is a backstop power in the OSA, which I remind the Honourable Lady, her previous government and her party voted for a backstop power if Ofcom, in the most serious cases, believes that companies refuse to comply with the law, they have the power to apply to a court for serious business disruption measures to stop people from accessing it. And if she disagrees with her own government's legislation, she should make it clear to the House. The legislation is actually extremely clear that it is a criminal offence to share or attempt to share intimate, non-consensual intimate images. It's going to be illegal to actually create or ask to create those images, and then with the ban on nudification apps, that will make a really important change too. This is not, as I've said, about anything to do with freedom of speech. It's about upholding British values and the British law. And I would also gently point out to the Honourable Lady who mentioned our allies in the United States that the President actually signed the Take It Down Act, which is precisely on non-consensual intimate images. So maybe she should do a little bit more actual research than just reading headlines online or in newspapers. I think the public looking at this will be clear about what they want to see change. I genuinely hope that this is something across the House that we can work on. You know, I actually believe that it is because I'm such a champion of freedom of speech that I want women to not feel that they are bullied, harassed of any platform, so their views and voices can be heard. And I can see by her colleagues' faces they may wish that the Honourable Lady took the same approach too.
Chair of the Select Committee, Chianwara.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. And unlike her shadow, the Secretary of State is rightly passionate in calling out these sexually abusive images. The libertarian tech bro lobby has to accept that consent counts online too. In her letter to me today, the Secretary of State said that the Online Safety Act was designed for this, but she is being overly generous to the previous government. The Act was designed or fudged to give adults some protection from illegal content on certain surfaces and protect children from harmful content more generally, but not including generative AI and without making platforms responsible for the content they share. So will she now accept my committee's recommendations and do more to explicitly plug the gaps in the Act, particularly regarding generative AI, as well as tackling the social media business models that incentivize content like this?
Secretary of State.
I want to say I am genuinely grateful to my honourable friend for all the work she and her committee have done on this issue since coming to this post. I have read in detail their work. She will know that I have already said, for example, on the issue of AI chatbots, some are covered by the Act if they do live searches or they share user content, but I asked my officials to see where there were gaps. They've said there are gaps, and I've said I want to plug them, including legislating if I have to, if that is necessary. This is a fast-moving area. I think with the Online Safety Act, plus the additional measures we've taken in the Data Act and that we will take in the Crime and Policing Act, we've got actually quite a comprehensive suite of issues here and powers. But I know this is developing quickly, particularly around generative AI, and I am always prepared to look at the facts and the evidence and go where that leads me, and if I need to take further action, I will.
Liberal Democrat spokesperson Victoria Collins.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. For over a week, Grok has generated illegal sexual abuse material, non-consensual images of women and children, and without the disgraceful step of putting it behind a paid paywall without restraint on X. This is abhorrent, and these images are illegal. And unlike the Conservatives, we very much welcome the action that is being taken and absolutely want to work together to stop this illegal, abhorrent use of AI technology. This is why the Liberal Democrats have called on the National Crime Agency to launch a criminal investigation into X and for Ofcom to restrict access immediately. We also called for MPs from Reform to donate their earnings to X to those charities that are working on those for those victims of sexual exploitation. So where there are loopholes around AI creation of these horrific images, we're very pleased to hear the Secretary of State announcing the establishment that it's a criminal offence to create or seek to create such horrific content, and the work to criminalise nudification apps. Regulatory gaps, however, are not the only problem. Enforcement is failing too. While other countries have acted decisively to ban X, Ofcom has taken over a week to start an investigation and lacks the resources to take on these tech giants.
What has become clear is that with the pace of technology, the government must look to future-proof online safety from new harms and harmful features. And so the Liberal Democrats have long been raising the alarm. We tabled amendments to raise the age of data consent, propose a doom scroll cap to curb addiction, and calls for public health warnings on social media. So will the government support our calls on these actions? Because protecting women and children from online abuse cannot wait. And this matters in real life. To my constituent who was harmed by strangulation in a nightclub following online videos, to the victims of sexual abuse and violence, which often starts online. So, does the Secretary of State have full faith in Ofcom's ability to enforce the Online Safety Act, given the pace of change? And will she meet with me? Because, unlike the Conservatives, I would like us to work together on this issue, which is so important, to discuss the action need to tackle this, AI chatbots and emerging technologies. This is a moment for the House to act together. Inaction sends a message that abuse online is acceptable, and we must prove otherwise.
I thank the Honourable Lady for her question. I think I've said to this House before, you know, patience is not my greatest virtue. But that's because the public, and most importantly victims, want to see this happen quickly. I think I said in my statement, I expect Ofcom, and because the public expects Ofcom to do this swiftly. We do not want to wait months and months for action. I am, of course, very happy to, as is the Minister responsible for online safety, to meet with her to discuss further steps. I would say that, you know, there are clear responsibilities here in terms of enforcement of the law on individuals and their behaviour, but the Online Safety Act, which I know her party voted for, it does place some of those requirements on Ofcom. We have got to see action, and I'm sure that message will be heard loud and clear today.
Chair of the Education Committee, Helen Hayes.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Can I welcome the Minister's statement and the additional steps that she has announced today? It is important that action that is taken keeps pace with the speed of the technology that it is seeking to influence. So can I press her on the timescale for the Ofcom investigation and any subsequent action that may be needed? Can I press her on the steps that the government is taking to ensure that children whose abuse is enabling the creation of images by Grok are safeguarded and protected, and that those responsible face the full force of the law? And can she confirm that if X continues to take the attitude and approach that we have seen so far in relation to these issues, that no options are off the table?
Secretary of State.
Absolutely no options are off the table, and as I said to the opposition spokesperson, the Online Safety Act does include that backstop power that if Ofcom decides they have repeatedly refused to comply with the law, they can apply to a court for serious business disruption measures. She's right to raise the issues around protecting children, that it is the most abhorrent crime. That is why this government has been so strong on this. I'm very happy to meet her and talk to her committee about what other steps we need to take. But we will make sure children are protected. No ifs and no buts.
Chair of the Culture and Media and Sport Committee, Caroline Dinage.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. The Secretary of State has given a very clear message on this, and I'd like to thank her for that today. She's right to say that this is not only about X and Grok, that actually there are very many generative AI platforms out there that are facilitating this illegal and dehumanising behaviour. Can I gently say to her, she's absolutely right that AI has enormous potential to reshape our lives, but over a year since the government attempted to sacrifice our world-beating creative industries and individuals' intellectual property on the altar of AI, we are still waiting for news of the AI bill. But I'm so pleased that she has drawn the line here, that she will not sacrifice the safety of women and children. I agree with her that there are gaps in the legislation. Of course there are, but there is a lot of legislation out there. But since the Online Safety Act came into force in March, Ofcom have taken so very little legal action against illegal content, which is just so prolific out there. So I asked the Secretary of State, how confident is she that Ofcom have A, the resources, but B, the willpower, the stomach to take on these big tech companies?
Secretary of State.
I'd like to thank the Right Honourable Lady for her comments, for her letter to me. I hope she's received that reply. I tried to get that done as quickly as possible in her passionate campaigning on this issue. Number one, she knows that myself and the Secretary of State for Culture and Media and Support have been deeply engaging with colleagues on the issue of AI and copyright. We will update the House by the 18th of March on next steps on that. She knows I want to find a way that absolutely backs our world-beating creatives, but also enables us to make sure our world-leading AI developers and academics can use that too. That is no easy task, but I'm determined to find a way forward. I think the proof of the pudding will be in the eating. This is a real test case, and people want to see action. They want to see the laws of this land upheld, and I'm sure that Ofcom knows, and will hear once again from members in this House, that that is what they need to do to get people's trust and to get their belief that this will work.
Dame Emily Thornberry.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I'm very glad to hear that the Secretary of State is going to take swift action on this matter, and I'm very glad to hear that she's open-minded and prepared to do whatever it takes. It would be great if the Minister could also act as swiftly against the bot farms abroad who target our democracy with lies and with mischief. Sometimes I appreciate it's difficult to prove, of course, unless you are a social media company yourself. But however, this weekend, the uprising in Iran resulted in the internet going down, just as it had done in the summer. And guess what happened? 1,300 bot accounts that support the Scottish nationalists went down. Now, either it is that there's a lot of Scottish nationalists in Iran, which I suspect there aren't, or there was a deliberate attempt to try to undermine our democracy and stir mischief. This is very serious. It is just one example that can be proved. What is going to happen as a result of this?
Secretary of State.
I thank my right honourable friend for her really important point about the impact on facts, our democracy, and the rule of the law. I know she takes this extremely seriously, and so does the government. The chair of the DSIT Select Committee has also written about misinformation, and I recently gave evidence about that to the Select Committee. I just want to reassure her that we are looking at all of these issues because, as I said, we want to uphold British values, the law and the facts. I think this is one of the really crucial issues in this whole debate because it can have really significant consequences if that doesn't happen.
Sir Julian Lewis.
Does the Secretary of State agree with me that in responding to a threat of this magnitude, a graduated response is required? And is she tentatively encouraged by the fact that X has decided to say that you cannot be anonymous in doing this sort of, wait for it, in doing this sort of mischief, wait for it? I don't think they are taking that step out of the goodness of their hearts. I think they're taking that step, please don't shout me down, I think they're taking that step because they are afraid of the sanctions that will come next. So should she not be encouraging Ofcom to impose the appropriate level of sanctions and to threaten to move to the next stage so that ultimately these big tech companies must know that if they persist, they will be fined again and again and again and ultimately stopped from broadcasting. They have blinked by doing this, but they must have the pressure ramped up in a graduated way.
Secretary of State.
I thank the right honourable gentleman for his question. I think I did set out in my statement the steps that can be taken. We know the informal investigation has been launched. I want to see that report ASAP. That's what the public would expect. And there are clear powers in the legislation to fine these companies up to 10% of their worldwide qualifying revenue, as well as this backstop power. I think that he will know other countries are taking a whole range of actions too. We've seen everything from some temporary bans in countries like, I think, Indonesia and Malaysia. Other countries are looking at amending their legislation to give them similar powers to us, as well as people making very clear that they want to put pressure on. I think all of this will send a very clear single message. I just hope MPs on all sides of the House would actually agree with that, and then we might actually protect all women and girls.
Emily Darlington.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I thank the Secretary of State for an absolute clear message that this is illegal. What they are doing is, what X is doing with using Grok is illegal, and it is much the platform's responsibility as the people using it. I'm afraid, though, there is less confidence in Ofcom's ability to actually enforce the Online Safety Act as it currently stands and the improvements being made. Does she agree with me and many across this country that we need to start seeing real action by the end of this week by Ofcom? Or we will judge Ofcom's leadership and individuals